to my podcast. Today I will be doing an Armchair GM for the Anaheim Ducks and the Arizona Coyotes. I'll be starting with the Anaheim Ducks and then moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. The first thing on the list for the Anaheim Ducks will be locking up Hampus Lindholm to a long-term extension. Hampus Lindholm will be an important part of the Anaheim Ducks for many years to come. He has already established himself as a top four defenseman in the lineup and will be probably on their top pair for many years. He has become a good two-way defenseman in the lineup, and you can already rely on him to play a shutdown pair, which is very important to have in the Western Conference. The next thing is re-signing Jamie McGinn, Brandon Pirri, and Mike Santorelli. They should re-sign Jamie McGinn and Brandon Pirri to 2-year deals, and Mike Santorelli to a 1-year deal. Jamie McGinn and Brandon Pirri were trade deadline acquisitions. These two players fit in very well with the Anaheim system and are big reasons why Anaheim is doing very well right now. They're fitting in very well with either the Getzlaf line or the Pirri line. And it's a huge reason why they are allowed to split up Getzlaf and Pirri. Mike Santorelli is, to me, one of the most underrated players in the NHL. He always can consistently get you maybe 30 or 40 points when he's playing with solid, good players, which makes him a good player to put alongside players like Pirri and Getzlaf, or Ryan Getzlaf. And the third thing on this list is trading Sami Vatanen. With the additions of Simon Dupré back from injury next season, the emergence of Josh Manson, and Shea Theodore likely to get a full-time spot in the lineup, that makes Sami Vatanen expendable for the Anaheim Ducks. Not saying that Sami Vatanen isn't good, but he is expendable because his ice time is now limited, because he normally plays on the third pair and normally plays just the power play. If you look at his ice time, he doesn't normally play over 20 minutes. So therefore, the Ducks should consider trading him for draft picks, like they did with Kyle Palmieri. So the result of the offseason should be like this. They won't have any off-season acquisitions, because their roster is pretty much in place. They have very good players, and that's the reason why they don't need to add any players. The players they will lose are David Perron, Chris Stewart, Sean Horcoff, Corbin Holzer, and Anton Khudobin. All these players are pretty much expendable, and you don't really need them in their line. So after all these re-signings and adjustments, this is how Anaheim's roster will look next season on my Armchair GM. The forward lines will be Brandon Pirri, Rickard, Rakell, and Corey Perry, Jamie McGinn, Ryan Getzlaf, and Mike Santorelli, Andrew Cogliano, Ryan Kesler, Jacob Silfverberg, Nick Ritchie, Nate Thompson, and Ryan Garbutt. And the defensive pairs will be Cam Fowler-Kevin Bieksa. Second pair would be Hampus Lindholm and Simon Dupré. The third pair will be Shea Theodore and Josh Manson. And the 7th defenseman will be Clayton Stoner. The 2 goalies will be John Gibson and Fredrick Andersen. They will probably lean towards John Gibson as the number 1 next year, even though it's likely that they continue the tandem goalie because you don't know if Gibson is truly ready for the full-time gig as a number 1 goalie, like starting 70-plus games. It's rare that you start 70-plus games, especially when you have a good backup. So he is likely to start maybe 60 games or something. So to wrap this up, the Anaheim Ducks are going to be one of the major players in the Western Conference. They will be a great team. There's no doubt about that. Despite the sluggish start to the season, the Anaheim Ducks have worked themselves up to the top of the Western Conference right now. And they are arguably one of the teams to beat in the playoffs. So that's telling you that the Anaheim Ducks are for real. Now I will be moving on to the Arizona Coyotes Armchair GM. From the top of the NHL to almost the cellar of the NHL. Unlike the Anaheim Ducks, the Arizona Coyotes are not so good. They aren't in as good a position as the Anaheim Ducks are. They need a lot of work. They are a rebuilding franchise that will rely on young players to get them wins, and it will be a long process. The first step in this rebuilding process is letting the young players like Ryan Strome come up and play important roles on the team. And that's the first step. The second step is to draft a young defenseman in the first round next year in the draft. The reason why I say that is because they don't have any top prospect defensemen in the system. They need a top prospect defenseman in the system that can be a future stud on the back end. Because other than Oliver Ekman-Larsson, you really don't have that really gem of a defenseman on the blue line. You need that. You need someone to put alongside Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The next thing on the list would be to re-sign Shane Doan. Shane Doan is everything you would want in an NHL veteran. He has played his whole NHL career with the Phoenix/Arizona franchise. I don't see him leaving the Coyotes anytime soon, so he's probably going to re-sign with them. Especially with the direction the Coyotes are going in, it's especially important that you have a veteran like Shane Doan in the lineup to mentor these young kids coming up. They have a lot of restricted free agents in their lineup that they really need to re-sign. These restricted free agents include Tobias Reider, Michael Stone, Kevin Connauton, Connor Murphy, Clay Dahlbeck, and Jari Sekac. I would say Tobias Reider should get locked up long term. Michael Stone and Kevin Connauton should get re-signed to 2-year deals. Connor Murphy and Clay Dahlbeck as well as to a 2-year deal, and Jari Sekac to a 1-year deal. Next, they have to get a UFA to fill the void at the second line right winger spot. A great fit for that position is Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart is a player that has struggled a bit in the recent years. Perhaps a change of scenery to a team that would actually use him would help. The Coyotes could actually use Chris Stewart. He's a physical presence that can score, he can fight, and he would really help the Arizona franchise out. So after all these moves, the Arizona Coyotes would be adding Chris Stewart. They would be losing Alex Tanguay and Boyd Gordon, as well as a couple of other players like Nicholas Grossman, who is going to be a very sought-after free agent who the Coyotes just can't afford to keep right now. So this is how the Coyotes lineup will look after all is said and done for my Armchair GM. The first line will be Anthony Duclair, Martin Hanzal, and Max Domi. That's a solid first line. The second line will be Tobias Reider, Dylan Strome, and Chris Stewart. This is a much improved second line. If you can get Chris Stewart playing as the physical guy on that line with Dylan Strome, who's the young up-and-coming center, and Tobias Reider, you have something going here. The third line should be Yuri Sekac, Antoine Vermette, and Shane Doan. This is a good third line. It's a solid checking line. You have veteran players and a young Sekac. The fourth line would be Jordan Martinook, Brad Richardson, and Kyle Chikora. This is a fourth line. It's nothing special, but it's a fourth line nonetheless. The defensive pairs would be Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Murphy as the first pair. Clay Dahlbeck and Zbynek as the second pair, and Kevin Connauton and Michael Stone as the third pair. Like I said before, if at all possible, they may want to bring a defenseman in to pair alongside Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but if they can't find anyone, this is how the defenseman will look next year. The goaltenders will be Mike Smith and Louis Domingue. Louis Domingue is a major upgrade over Anders Lindback because Louis Domingue can step in and win you games, actually. And this is a big beneficiary to Mike Smith. So you don't have to play him all 70 games or whatnot. You can get away with playing Mike Smith maybe 60 games or something, or 65 games. You don't have to overload Mike Smith because your backup is inadequate. So to wrap up my thoughts on the Arizona Coyotes, they are a young rebuilding team that has a lot of work to do. But if they are able to have this final roster, they would be a much better and improved team than they are this year. Next episode or next podcast, I will be the Armchair GM for the Boston Bruins and Buffalo Sabres.